So this is a set of quick thoughts about the dangers of militant atheism and the ideas of preaching atheism. And I say this as someone who has done this very often myself, and whose mind is beginning to change on the subject, and just interested in the opinions of others, or anybody who is themselves an atheist or often finds himself in conversation with religious individuals and all the rest of it. My first point on atheism, particularly with regards to YouTube and the internet and everything else, is that we very much live often in an echo chamber. We see a lot of individuals making the same points again and again and again about atheism, about the ridiculousness of creationism, about the the ideas and everything else that religion and various different religions hold. They range from the kind of basic demagogic sort of creationism is retarded, all the way through to the extremely intelligent and subtle arguments dissecting the actual scriptures or histories of a religion. Either way, we exist within a spectrum of atheism on the internet, and I've found very often as well that we live within an echo chamber. That is to say, naturally, we all convalesce around, or rather coalesce around, the opinions with which we agree. So we start watching things that we agree with, and individuals we agree with, and we find ourselves echoing their opinions, and their opinions echoing ours. The internet is very much an echo chamber with regards to that, so we are very often not exposed to the religious side, and when we are exposed to the religious side, it's usually the, again, a spectrum of the ridiculous, uninformed, kind of book-thumping version of a given religion, which is just all scripture and verse sort of asserting itself, or occasionally the extremely intelligent, extremely sensible, logical arguments of given religious individuals, which, although ultimately false or fallible, are still put in a very compelling and sensitive way. I would say that as somebody who's become an atheist, not fairly recently, but who's been an atheist for a while, I understand now more the dangers of militant atheism, of preaching atheism. We have a seductiveness of knowing that we're right, and I don't mean feeling that we're right or believing that we're right, obviously, because those are traits that are held by the religious. I mean the absolute logical, evidential proof of knowledge that the world's major monotheistic or polytheistic or even pantheistic faiths are false. The weight of evidence, self-inquiry and discovery has led us to the understanding, not the feeling or the emotion, that a given thing is true. But that also awakes in us something else. It's like when the curtains are drawn, when the wall is pulled away from your eyes, suddenly you have a sense of a world in conflict. You're Neo waking up in your tube, and you realize just how much of humanity is asleep. And again, you don't realize it in the sense of souls to save. You realize it in the sense of minds to free. And then there becomes a danger, because we look to our heroes in the atheist community. We look to those who first freed us, whether it was Hitchens, Dawkins, Harris, or any of those individuals. And we see them daily on YouTube confronting the religious, taking part in chat programs, taking part in debates, in standing talks, anything. And very often they're extremely polemic. They stand and they negotiate and they debate, sometimes with gentle, conciliatory sort of motions, as is occasionally true of Harris, and other times with belligerent, cutting, absolutely undeniable forthright logic, like someone like Hitchens. However, our heroes seduce us into the premise that we can simply do the same, that we can ape their arguments, that we can repeat ourselves and repeat them to the echo chamber. Our little community continues to evangelize itself, to radicalize itself amongst these arguments. And it's all well and good that we put up these videos and we do these things to try and hope that individuals will discover atheism through us, or will discover the ability to begin to question their beliefs through us. But I'm beginning to wonder just how much value there is in preaching atheism. I will always respond with the atheist answer or the logical answer if asked about religion, but I'm too often guilty of bringing the subject up myself and forcing it into conversation with religious individuals, friends and family included, and it's damaging to those relationships. Is it healthy? Is it right? And it's taken me a little while to think about, and I realise now that very often the number of times I became angry or frustrated when individuals would try and foist their religion upon me, the same is probably true of atheism. So what do? If we can't approach people, if we can't talk to them about atheism, if we can't want to help them free their minds from what we understand and know to be the ridiculous nature of their beliefs and the self-limiting, slave-like nature of what their beliefs have done to their lives, What do we do? Where do we put all that compassion and that energy? Very often I think that that compassion and that energy becomes anger, because we look around ourselves and we think, how could you be so stupid? How could you be so dumb as to believe something like that? When actually maybe many of us were in the same position for many years. Some of you maybe not. I know I was. And we often think to ourselves, how could you not be at the same point in the cycle than I am? Tolerance for religion is wrong, and I've said this before. I no more can tolerate a religious belief than I should tolerate somebody who holds repugnant political views and tries to establish a political party around those things. Religion has no special place where it must be tolerated. We mustn't respect religion in any way we wouldn't respect anything else. But does that mean we shouldn't respect the religious individual? And by that I don't mean being, cursing toward them, being angry or dismissive, but I mean, should we respect the religious individual to the point whereby we don't actually address their faith unless they raise it with us? And in that I'm not so sure. I guess, for me, the answer lies in the difference between individual belief and social policy. I firmly believe that we should, as atheists, counteract social policy which is based on religion. Any special favour, recognition or bias towards religion or religious institutions in any way that tries to make its way into our state or our laws or our government practices, we should aim to abolish. And the same is true of things like faith schools, special allowances regards to taxation, etc. for churches or mosques or any other religious group or building. I don't think they allow and should be allowed any special treatment or any special respect, and certainly I don't think they should be allowed, to waive taxation or waive their ability or obligation to teach the truth to children with regards to the fact that they are somehow different by virtue of being religious. But at the same time, I also recognise the fact that we have to distinguish between the institutions and the individuals. And I'm interested here as to what many of you think. Do you think that we should be proselytising atheism? Should we be preaching atheism to the individual? Should we be setting up our stalls and allowing them to approach us? Is that a middle way? Are we able to, ring the bell for atheism in the town square and hand out leaflets and see if people who are interested in atheism approach us about it? Or is that just as bad as proselytising religion and throwing it down people's throats? Certainly it would seem to me that it's off limits to actually force an individual to talk about their faith and try and counteract it when they're not ready. I guess it's like Morpheus says, we never free a mind when it's got beyond a certain point. The mind has trouble getting free and it has trouble adapting. There are many theists we're never going to reach, because not only have they rationalised their position, they have drummed it into themselves. It has become who they are. They are emotionally bound to what they believe, to the point that their character, psychology and personality would simply fall apart. We need to look for a graceful degradation. We need to very gradually take away the supports that support what they believe and allow them to challenge it. But no individual can come to atheism without challenging themselves, without it being a personal journey. They must approach the atheistic community. And very often I think maybe our anger, or indeed even our sheer annoyance, emotion toward theism holds us back, makes us unapproachable. But I don't know. I can't speak for all atheists because that's like herding cats. I can only speak for myself. I know very often I've got an extremely deep desire to reach out and talk to my religious friends and family and try and get them to understand the truth that I understand. Not the belief, not the faith, not the feeling, but the logical, evidentially supported truth that all faith is pointless. But am I just as guilty as proselytizing if I do that? For wanting them to have a free life away from, the ideas of sin and the obligations of religion and religious ceremony? Or should I just let them be? So for me, I think the difference in atheism and religion comes in this. We should fight tooth and nail to remove religion from any form of social policy, any form of social recognition as a special thing or as a special status. Whether it's tax relief, faith schools, or anything else, we should fight tooth and nail to make sure that the state, the meta-state, us writ large, doesn't support religion. But I'm slowly coming to the idea that the religious must come to us, rather than us going to them. Or perhaps we should somehow set out our stall in the middle, and hope some of them will have questions. I don't know. What are your thoughts?